Welcome to the BVTV network, coming from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. Now, the mind can be a powerful ally in your quest for success, but also, as many have recently found out during the pandemic, it can also be a considerable foe. Keeping your mind as an ally on your side has always been one of my personal objectives, but I must admit, I've done it without correct structure or true understanding. So now's the time to put that right, as we visit the founder of MindLily and say hello to Kam Knight. Welcome, Kam.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. I am happy to be here, and I'm glad that you have me on your show.
I'm just chuffed that we're going to get our mindset right. But listen, where are you today?
Right now, I am in the big state of Texas, in a fantastic city called Austin.
Yeah, the capital. Yes, yeah. You know, it is gobsmackingly big, Texas, isn't it?
It is a massive state. In fact, I think when we were talking before the show started, I've heard a statistic like Texas is the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world. So if you were to separate Texas from the US, like it would just be a massive economy on its own.
All right, yeah. Well, I've visited many of those places. It's just a fabulous San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and so on. Like Kam,
yeah.
My viewers and listeners, I'm going to be chatting to Kam in three parts. Now, first, I'll ask him why we never achieve our goals that we set. In part two, I'll ask him about how to achieve the skill of speed reading. I think that's a really important skill. And in part three, I'm focusing on concentration. So keep your focus, Malcolm, concentration. But first, Kam, can you briefly tell us who is Kam Knight and what fascinates you about mental performance?
All right. Well, my name is Kam Knight. I'm a coach, writer, and author of nearly a dozen books. Some have recently hit the bestsellers in the area of mental performance, such as memory, concentration, and speed reading. And for the past 15 years, I've dedicated my life to understanding the secrets of the mind. So I'm not one to give people advice what they should or should not do or how they should or should not do it. I focus on that middle ground of how to get people to do what it is that they want to do. And what fascinates me about the mind, I really can't say or pinpoint. I just know that when I hear about interesting facts about the mind and how it works and different limitations it has, it just like perks me up like fireworks. It draws me in. It floods my body with positive emotions where I want to know more. And I think many of us have had these kind of experiences with different hobbies or activities. And for me, it just happens to be the mind.
Fascinating. And do you think, though, at this moment in time, we have a problem with the mind and, should we say, mental health, or has it always been around? It's just that nobody's talked about it.
I think a little bit of both. I think the complexity of the human brain, some say it's a pinnacle of complexity in the known universe, more complex than stars and planets and even airplanes. And due to its complexity, there's going to be inherent problems in it not working to the best of its ability or as intended. But at the same time, we are at a time and in a culture where there's just so much information coming at us. And there's so many avenues such as television and social media and telephone and cell phones that in some ways it's being overworked or not worked in the way that it was intended to work. And so it is creating slower attention, we have less memory about the things that are coming at us. And there's also, because of this overwhelm, it's being overworked, and as a result, not operating to the best of its abilities.
Well, let's try and get it working correctly then in our conversation. Yeah, let's move into part one. Kam, why do we all get excited about a goal, a project, or a pursuit, but never see it through to the end? Can that be corrected?
Yes, and it's actually kind of a complex answer because we are such a complex being. But, when you look at the Western culture, especially here in the US, there's this constant stream and wave of personal development message, whether it's from movies, television, music, books, and podcasts. And there's this constant message of like, you need to be doing good and you need to be doing better and reaching for the stars and being your best self. And as far as back as I can remember, I've been a very driven individual. And I would say like extremely driven. And I've had my fair share of success, but in many ways, I have fallen short, considerably shorter than my expectations or what I would have liked. And so one of the things I learned early on is that wanting does not equate to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll be able to take the necessary steps to take it. And I wonder why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't do it or I'm unable to do it. And it was a question that lingered in my mind for a long time, pretty much for the last 10 to 15 years. Every time I felt stuck, it was like, why can't I get to the next step? Or why can't I get over this hurdle? And the more coaching I did and personal development programs I signed up to, the more I started to come up with this concept that the mind is built to hold us back. That's right. There is a part of our mind that is designed to keep us from growing and making progress. Wow. So if you follow a lot of personal development or self-help, a lot of the talk is your mind is infinite, you can do anything you want. But then when you go into like a lot of psychology, it's a lot of the mind is built to block you. And the analogy I like to give people is that anytime a decision, option, or a course of action stands before you, that decision gets analyzed by the mind using a whole host of criteria. And if the decision is not in line with the criteria, the mind will prevent action. So it doesn't matter how much motivation you have or how simple the solution is, or even how much benefit you can derive. If the mind doesn't approve the decision, you can't act. Period.
So how do we get the mind to approve the decision then?
Well, one is to understand the criteria that the mind is evaluating. So again, if you have a decision or course of action or a pursuit that you want to do, that decision will filter through the mind, looking at your beliefs, looking at your identity. Do you have authority issues? Looking at things like your family systems, like how you were raised in your family we tend to act out in our real life. Yeah. So if we fall into a particular role in our family, then we are playing that role in real life. And when we get stuck, it helps to really analyze those things. Like, where's my beliefs at? Do I believe that it's even possible? Do I believe that this is possible for me? Is my identity in line with it? Identity is kind of an interesting concept, but our brain is designed to have us act in line with the identity that we have formed. So if we have an identity that I'm a rebel, then if we try to be studious, our mind will block it because we're trying to be a rebel. Or if a great example of identity is, are you a Mac or a PC? If you're a PC, you couldn't buy a Mac even if you tried. If you're a Mac PC, people likely know you to the point where you don't want to buy a Mac or a PC. And so these things like really come up. But what's interesting is that the mind doesn't tell us when it's holding us back, why it's holding us back. We just kind of feel paralyzed or unable to move forward, or we get distracted by all these different things. And when we get caught in that, it's important to understand, okay, I'm being blocked. There's probably a reason why I'm being blocked. And let's look at these reasons. And again, some of them include beliefs and identity. Others include authority issues and family systems. And then it gets a little bit more complex as well. But the key thing is to see if you're being blocked and not able to move forward, becoming aware of it, and then taking the necessary steps that you need to figure out what it is and then move past it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Kam, before we move to part 2, let me just ask everyone to do for themselves and their friends a big favor. Go to the Kam's website, which you see on the screen behind me, viewers, listeners, I'm going to give you that. It's MindLily, MindLily, mindlily.com. You got that down, listeners? Now, viewers and listeners, go there and you can download free Kam's 3 Steps to Conquer Resistance. Now, you can see the front page on the screen, obviously viewers only, but go there to mindlily.com, download free Kam's 3 Steps to Conquer Resistance. You'll do it and get a valuable taste of Kam's immense ability. Kam's written a number of best-selling books, as he said beforehand. So let me put you on the spot, Kam, and ask which one of all your books should viewers and listeners buy first?
I think of my nearly dozen books, I think the number one, the book that they should buy should be Speedreading. It's called Speedreading, Learn to Read a 200-page book in 1 hour. And the reason I recommend that is if the listeners are going to read any of the other books, it'll help to be able to know some techniques of how to read effectively. And reading effectively is not just about reading fast, but being able to understand what you read and remember it afterward. So if they can get the foundations down first, not only can they go through the other material quicker, but they'll understand it better and then remember it more and for longer, which means that they can apply it in their life more and longer.
Now, just as a matter of total coincidence, in part 2, Kam, I love your work on helping with speed reading. I attempt to do it as I pour through so many books each week for our BV TV shows. You say there's a technique that can triple people's reading in a matter of seconds. Can we please have it?
Sure. So there are a few techniques that can double to triple a person's reading speed very quickly. But before I get into the technique, I want to kind of share how I came about it because it'll help people understand why the technique is important and how and be encouraged to use it. So the mind and eyes are extremely powerful. And they have the ability to take in and process information extremely fast. So if you and your listeners can do a quick exercise, look up from your computer and notice everything around you. So if you're in your room, notice the tables, the chairs, the painting on the walls, the carpet on the floor, and everything else. Your mind and eyes processes those things so fast, you don't even notice the processing happen. So you can look at a table. So your mind isn't looking at a table going, well, that object over there, it has 4 legs and a flat top, so it must be a table. And the object next to it has 4 legs, a flat top, and a backrest, so it's a chair. No, you simply point your eyes in a direction and your mind simultaneously take in and process what you see. And I wondered, why can't we do that with text? And the thing is, we can. It's just that we weren't taught to. Our educational system, they did an amazing job of teaching us how to combine letters to form syllables and then to combine syllables to form words, but they didn't help us take the next step to be able to absorb multiple words, phrases, and even an entire sentence at a time. And that's what speed reading is about. It's about using the power of your mind and eyes to grab multiple pieces of text. And that can drastically increase your reading speed. Now, there's 2 ways to do that. One is called chunking, and another is called space reading, and I'll quickly go over both. Chunking is a very traditional speed reading technique that's been talked about by a lot of memory experts and authors. And more or less, instead of reading 1 word at a time, your goal is to grab groups of words at a time or chunks. So you grab 3 to 4 words and in one meaning-rich unit, and then you move to the next. And you move at a pace as if you were going from one word to the next. And you'd be surprised. On the surface, it may seem like it's complicated to do, but you'd be surprised how quickly you can do it. And it doesn't take much practice, and within minutes, be reading double to triple the speed. The other technique is called space reading. This isn't so traditional. It's something that I've been working on and developing over the last few years. And this involves looking at the spaces between the words. not actually the words, but the spaces between. And I know what you're thinking, Malcolm. How can looking at spaces between words help me improve my reading speed? Well, the reason it can is because when you look at a word, it actually narrows your focus onto that word. So it's hard to see the words next to it, to the left and right. But when you look at the space between it, your focus, the focus of the eyes, they don't narrow in, and they can actually grab the word to the left and right, and then again simultaneously take in and process. So the trick is to look at spaces between every 3 to 4 words and go from one space to the next. And if a reader does that, they'll be shocked at how, even though they're just looking at the space, their mind is taking in the words and understanding it like instantly. And all you have to do is go from space between 3 to 4 words throughout the paragraph and page, and you'll just be practically inhaling information. So those are the 2 main ways to do it.
I've learned at a very early age in my management business, when I was working theatre and everything, you had to have to count out in those days the sales. So I can count figures, dollars, pounds, and everything like that extremely quickly. I don't actually count them. My mind counts them. I'm all switched off, and I can even do that to some extent upside down now, which is a really nice party trick when you're trying to impress somebody. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, my final part, Kam, how can we all improve our ability to concentrate? Simple question there. Have you got a simple answer?
Ooh, okay. The challenge with concentration is that it's extremely difficult to do. And the reason I would even go as far as to say concentration may be one of the most difficult skills to develop. And the reason I say that is that for 3 main reasons. One is that we have a lot of activity inside of our mind and body. So we have thoughts running in and out. We have mental images flashing back and forth via daydreams and mental movies. And then we also have all sorts of emotions and sensations coursing through us. Emotions of maybe fear and anxiety and anger or even joy. And then sensations of aches and pains. And all of this activity competes with the outside world for our attention. So somebody could be listening to this presentation, but their thoughts might be on what they're going to do this weekend. Or they might be in a lecture and having daydreams about a beach vacation. Or they could be in a conversation and have some other worry or concern, and so not be able to focus. So this is one thing that makes concentration challenging. Another thing that makes concentration challenging is that the way our mind works, all of our thoughts, ideas, and experiences, they're all actually connected together. So our thoughts and memories, they're not floating aimlessly in our head, but they're linked like roots of redwood trees. What that means is anytime we have a thought or idea, it'll trigger a whole host of other thoughts and ideas, and that'll trigger other thoughts and ideas. So we could be listening to sentence 1 of what somebody is saying and miss sentences 2, 3, and 4 because we're still thinking about sentence 1. In fact, I will go as far as to say, Malcolm, that there are people listening to this show right now who are not paying attention to what we're saying because their mind is still on what we said earlier. Yeah. And then the main reason why concentration is a challenge is because in many ways, concentration is a battle. It's a battle between your unconscious mind and your conscious mind. You see, our unconscious mind evolved over 200 million years to prioritize certain tasks and activities. Our conscious mind has been around for only about 100 to 200,000 years. And so we could consciously, with our thinking mind, want to focus on reading a report or a book, but our unconscious doesn't want anything to do with that. It wants to do something else. So all of these 3 things make it an inherent challenge to improve concentration. But it doesn't mean that it can't be. And I'll give 2 techniques on how to do that. One is called retrieval. Retrieval is more or less a memory technique of recalling information that you have read, heard, or watched instead of rereading, rehearing, or rewatching it again. For example, after reading a chapter in a book, you close the book and you think about everything that you read instead of going back to your notes or looking at the book again. Or after watching a show like this, you think about everything that was said and the important points you want to follow up on. Now, retrieval is really effective for improving concentration for two main reasons. One is because it's not easy to apply retrieval. It's kind of difficult to go into your mind and battle with all that inner activity, your thoughts and images, to try to recall what you had just read, heard, or watched, or material that you want to retain. And by practicing sitting with that difficulty of recalling something while other distractions are coming up, you're developing the ability to focus, which can be carried into other areas. In fact, if a person applies retrieval regularly in their life, their mind will naturally become more attentive and focused, because over time, the mind will realize, hey, wait a minute, I know this information is going to be called on later, so I better do a better job of paying attention to it now. And the other reason, so that's one technique, is retrieval. The other technique is something I call directed questions. So I don't know if you know this, Malcolm, or your audience, but inside our mind, there's a mechanism that is designed to seek answers anytime a question is asked. So anytime a question is posed, whether it's by you or someone else, a mechanism in our mind is triggered to begin seeking possible answers, and then it brings it to our awareness. So it doesn't matter what question you ask. You can ask two opposing questions. The mind will simply start thinking about answers and bring them up to you. So we can use this principle to help us focus. We can ask ourselves questions that direct our mind to focus better. We can ask ourselves, how can I be more attentive? How can I pay attention to this book I'm reading? How can I be more present in this lecture or with this presentation? And guess what? That'll engage that mechanism. And when that mechanism's engaged, it'll disengage other things that are going on in our head, so we can think about the answers. And then it'll give you answers. It might say things like, put your phone down and start paying attention. And sometimes what's interesting is, like, you may not get answers and you'll just find yourself more attentive. Sometimes you'll get answers and you'll naturally put it into practice. And other times you'll get answers and you just have to consciously apply it. And you can not only ask these kind of questions, but you can ask questions related to the information you're receiving. So you can say, what is this person saying? What does he want me to know, and why? How will this help me? And for the mind to answer it, it has to be paying attention to the person delivering the information, and you'll find yourself a little bit more focused and attentive. So these are two really effective ways. One is to apply retrieval, where anytime you read, hear, or learn something, quickly recall what it is that you read, heard, or learned, and then to use directed questions. Anytime you want to be focused and your thoughts are everywhere but on the thing that you want it to be on, ask yourself how you can bring it there. How can I be more attentive? How can I be more focused? How can I make sure I get through the rest of the day finishing all my tasks? Just ask yourself some questions, and you'll be surprised how easily things just shift, where you are able to be more attentive and able to get the things you want to get done.
That's brilliant advice, Kam. Brilliant. Now, my belief is that your mind is better than any computer that will ever be invented, but it's important to use it fully and keep it as an ally. I trust our visit to meet Kam Knight has made yours resolve to do just that. Now, don't forget to go to MindLily, all the W's, MindLily.com, and download his free 3 Steps to Conquer Internal Resistance. Thanks, Kam, for a great interview.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. I really hope this information is helpful to your listeners.